He said that the blood of the martyrs became the seedbed for the early church. It was the martyrs who gave strength and impetus. And instead of drowning out the Christian church, as was hoped by the Jewish leaders and Roman leaders and others, it actually was a seedbed for growth. And that's what we're going to see right now. The 12th chapter of Acts, we can't say exactly for sure, but it was probably written somewhere around 42 AD. And so you see that's very close to the resurrection of Christ. And to the early church, you know, they had had so many problems. Actually, every day of of the life of the church going forward, and now the persecution is getting terrible. It's getting so strong, and I've often wondered, how would we do? How would we do if it really was difficult to be a Christian? I've been thinking about this quite a bit. There's more persecution of Christians in the world today than ever before. Now that might surprise you, because we don't live in that world, part of the world. We don't hear much about that. There are Christians that are slaughtered on a regular basis, not just one and two, but tens and hundreds of Christians that are slaughtered because of their beliefs right now in the world that we're living in. And I want to say one thing, and I'm saying this very carefully, but I've been thinking about it all week long. I wonder how long it will be before Christians in our country could face persecution. I believe that that's started. Now, we're not there. This is not going to be a doomsday sermon. But I do believe that has started. It's very small at this time, but I believe it's starting to move forward like a snowball that starts moving forward and then it gains momentum. It's going and going. And I want to say to the young people that are here now, I'm so glad that you're here, and I want you to be learning, because you're going to need information, you're going to need inspiration to help you as you go forward when you're 60, 70, 80, 90 years of age. And it may be difficult. Now, I know that probably everybody in here is thinking, oh, Tim, you know, that's kind of stuff you hear on television and all that. I'm not there. I'm not going there. I don't like those kinds of words and sermons, etc. But let me remind you that what happened in Germany could happen in this country very easily. I think we're moving in that direction. Personally, I'm not saying that there's a Hitler out there and all that. Please don't leave here thinking that I've inferred that. I'm not. I'm just thinking that most of us have enjoyed a very easy time to be a Christian and to stand for our beliefs. We can walk down Main Street of Hartselle reading a Bible and be on an intercom, say anything that we wanted to. I don't think there's anybody here would worry that there would be some negative result of that. But, and I hope that doesn't ever come, but I believe it could. It was terrible for the early church at this time. And we're going to read some about it, and I've got 2 or 3 very important points that I want to make as we go along. It says in the 12th chapter, first verse, about that time Herod the king, which Herod the king? There were three Herod the kings that we know about, and it's important that we define these. There was Herod the Great, who was the king, who was the one who tried to kill baby Jesus, and there was mass slaughter of male Jew babies, and he wasn't successful, thank God, but that was Herod the Great. And there was Herod Antipas, who was the king who put Jesus on the cross. And then there was Herod Agrippa, who was the king that we're reading about right now. He was the nephew of Herod Antipas, and they were all three bad people. So when you hear the word Herod, you just think bad things. But it tells us that Herod was the king and that he laid violent. You notice that descriptive word? He laid violent hands on some who belonged to the church. Now I want to make an important point that I hope we all get, because I see so much misunderstanding with this. There are so many Christians, and I run into them all the time. There are so many Christians who believe that when you become a Christian, that you sort of are in a cocoon of protection, so to speak, and bad things aren't going to happen to you, only good things will happen to you because you're a Christian. The problem with that philosophy is it's just not true. It might sound good, but it's just not true. It's not biblical at all whatsoever. I mean, look at Jesus and how it turned out for him. And now look at a chapter like this where we're seeing brutal persecution. It's not true for these people. It wasn't true for the Apostle Paul. He had been jailed and shipwrecked and beaten and etc. And we as Christians need to snuff out that idea every time we hear it. I hear things sometimes and I just have to bite my tongue. I don't want to jump into that and say anything because people will just allude to that. Well, that person's a Christian. They're going to be all right. Everything's going to be just fine. That's not a promise that we have here. Jesus told his disciples, you will have tribulation. There's going to be problems that you're going to have to deal with. And I think it's better for us as Christians to be honest. And if we can gently say to people, I'm not protected from tribulations and problems and etc. God doesn't promise us that. Then I think it's better to be honest and say that. So it's certainly not true for these poor people at this time. It says in the second verse, he killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. Actually, what he did there was he cut James' head off. That's what Herod had done. I'm glad he defined for us which James it was, because there were like three Herods, there were three James that were all a part of the apostles. There was James, the brother of Jesus, who became the head of the church in Jerusalem. We're going to see that as we go forward in Acts. There was James of Alphaeus, and actually that poor guy, we don't know a thing about him, you might, but I don't hardly know a thing about him. We know that he was one of the disciples. And then we have this one that is carefully defined. This is James, the brother of John, the sons of Zebedee, and he was quite close to Jesus. If you remember, there were three that Jesus was closest to: Peter, James, and John. Two of those are involved in this chapter. We're going to see Peter in just a moment. But this is James, that one who was so close to Jesus. The one that their mothers came to Jesus privately and said, hey, I'm going to put it in my words, hey, our boys really like you. They believe in what you're doing. They're campaigning for you like crazy. When you get the opportunity, you see that they're sitting on one side and the other side of you. And that wasn't anything that Jesus wanted to hear about. And so he told her quickly that it was a different situation altogether. That's the James who this is. And in fact, the legend is, we can't prove this, but the legend is when this James got ready to be martyred, to be killed for his beliefs and his teachings, that a young man was there who was helping with the execution. And the young man heard James's words and saw the peace and contentment that James portrayed as he was about to be beheaded. And the young man placed his faith and trust in Jesus Christ at that moment, and they put him down. They cut his head off as well. That's the legend. I can't prove whether that's true or not, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's not true. So that's what's going on here. So much hatred, so much meanness against Christianity. And part of it is the major sea change that had taken place with Christianity. There was a point up until, I think, last chapter when we ran into it, there was a point that if you were a Christian, you were a Jewish person. And you observed all of the Jewish laws and customs, dietary laws, etc. And then God led Peter to offer Christ to the Gentiles and at Caesarea. And we had these Gentiles who came to Christ, and now that had been discovered in Jerusalem. They hated that people could come straight to Christianity without first going through Judaism. I hate to think this way. I hope I'm wrong, but I think part of that might have been we're going to miss the money. They no longer had to come through and give those gifts, those alms, etc., that they had to in Judaism. Now they come straight to Christ. And so what an uproar that caused. And that was especially focused on Peter, who'd been the one that shared Christ with those Gentiles in Caesarea. And so that's where we are at this time. It says, and when he saw that pleased the Jews, the killing of James, he proceeded to arrest Peter also. I guess Peter had just been standing back here somewhere, kind of minding his own business, which really he wasn't. He's preaching Christ wherever he goes. But it says, this was during the days of unleavened bread, and when he had seized him, he put him in prison, delivering him over to 4 squads of soldiers to guard him. 4 squads of soldiers given to Peter. There were 4 men in a squad. So that means they've got 16 men who are responsible for guarding Peter. And of course, they couldn't all guard him every moment, but they were all over him, so to speak. It says, intending after the Passover to bring him out to the people. Well, we all know what would have happened when they brought him out to the people unless God intervened. So it says in the 5th verse, so Peter was kept in prison, but earnest prayer for him was made to God by the church. Here's my second huge point that I hope everybody will get. A part of our purpose as a church, and it's not a side purpose, It's not a lower purpose. It's a primary purpose of our church is prayer. We're to be in prayer as a church. We do that on Sunday mornings. We need to be doing that during the week, but especially when we come together, we're to be coming together in prayer. God has been teaching me about this over the last couple of years, and I'm so thankful that He has. I'm not saying that I didn't understand prayer at all until a couple of years ago. I had a high view of prayer, but I've got a higher view of prayer than I had before. And what God is saying to me recently is, Tim, prayer is a part of being the most loving church in this area. I want you to get that. I want you to get that. When I say that I hope our church becomes the most loving church in this area, that has to be that we become one of the most praying churches in our area. And it worries me that we have lowered the idea of prayer so much. I hear people now sometimes, and this is another thing that causes me to cringe some, but I hear people say sometimes when they hear something bad has happened to somebody that they know, they will often say, well, all we can do is pray. They don't mean it that way, I don't think, but it sounds like they're saying prayer is really not much. I wish we could do more than pray. I don't think they mean it that way at all, but that's exactly how it sounds. All we can do is pray. And we should actually have the other attitude and look at people with a smile and a strength and say to them, we will pray for you. And that's what people should want to hear most. If you hear that I've been in an accident or get deadly sick or whatever, do this for me, pray. Pray. I want you to go to the Lord in prayer, because God hears prayer and God answers prayer. And if we're going to become, how can we do this? If we want to become the most loving church in our area, and I do, I want us to become that. We cannot be that. We'll never be that if we're not fervent in prayer. So I want that to bother you. I want you to think about that this week. How can we do that as a church? How can we be the most praying church in this community? I think God is calling us to be that. So Peter tells us in the 5th verse, Peter was kept in prison. Earnest prayer for him was made to God by the church. And now when Herod was about to bring him out, and we know that bringing him out meant he's probably a goner. Herod would much rather have had Peter's neck on the chopping block than James's, wouldn't he? So on that very night, it says, Peter was sleeping between two soldiers. How is he sleeping? How is this man sleeping? Ever been around somebody that doesn't just sleep? My dad was one of those. My dad would get home from the railroad and he'd say to me, I want you to wake me up in 15 minutes. My dad would go lie down in the bed and he was asleep. I don't have that gift. it's a gift with Peter like that, but Peter has a peace in his heart and his mind. I would hope that any of us, if we knew we were facing that kind of persecution, could lie down. Remember, he's in chains. Lie down, and he's conked out. He's asleep. It says he's bound with 2 chains, like he's Charles Manson or something. Bound with 2 chains, and sentries before the door were guarding the prison. And behold, an angel of the Lord stood next to him, and a light shone in the cell. He struck Peter on the side and woke him up. Hey, get up, wake up. He says, get up quickly. Don't you hate to be woke up like that? Wake up, get up quickly. And the chains fell off his hands, and the angel said to him, dress yourself and put on your sandals. And he did so. And he said to him, wrap your cloak around you and follow me. And he went out and followed him. He did not know that what was being done by the angel was real, but thought he was seeing a vision. When they had passed the first and the second guard, they came to the iron gate leading into the city. And that iron gate was kept locked. So chains have dropped off of him. They've come to this locked gate leading into the city. And it says it opened for them of its own accord. And they went out and went along one street, and immediately the angel left him. When Peter came to himself, he said, now I'm sure that the Lord has sent his angel and rescued me from the hand of Herod and from all that the Jewish people were expecting. And the story goes on there in the 12th verse. It said, when he realized this, he went to the house of Mary, the mother of John, whose name was Mark, where many were gathered together and were praying. Scholars think that this Mary, the mother of John Mark, that it was her home where they had the Lord's Supper, where Jesus met with the disciples before his crucifixion. And when he knocked at the door of the gateway, a servant girl named Rhoda came to answer. Recognizing Peter's voice in her joy, she did not open the gate, but ran in and reported that Peter was standing at the gate. He's still out there knocking. It's been funny this week as I've listened to a sermon or two on this subject. The preacher in the sermon would usually do something like that, and I wrote dog Elsie. She thinks it was a knock at the door. And every time Elsie would raise her head up, look around to protect us, and so it was just in the recording. That little girl, Rhoda, back to the house, said it's Peter, and they come out and joyously receive him. I want us to become the most loving church in this area. We've got to remember that we will, as we move forward in that, we'll face some persecution. There will be some challenges. Let me tell you something, folks, and I hate to say this, but I want to tell you the truth and be honest. If we move toward being the most loving church in this area, Satan's not going to sit on the bench and just say, well, that's wonderful. Y'all have at it. I've told Ralph Garth that several times as they move forward and that they've had great spiritual gains, and then they hit roadblock after roadblock. And I've said to him, Ralph, Satan's not going to sit on the bench and just wave you on and let you do that. Our church is not going to become the most loving church around here and Satan not give us problems. You know how that starts? Usually, if a church starts moving forward, doing the right thing, showing God's love in the community, being a praying church, etc., then Satan usually starts people talking in the church. You ever been to a church like that? Our church is not like that. I don't want to see us go that way, but that's what happens. Gossip starts, and it usually starts in an innocent way, but pretty soon it can get really dark and really vicious. It happened to the early church. Why would we think it would not happen? Satan was all over these people as they killed James and got ready to kill Peter. And the other thing I want us to remember is that the Lord is calling us to be a church of prayer. He told us that if we would pray as a church, that He would hear our prayer and answer our prayer. And I would say to anybody who knows Christ as Savior and Lord, that you need to be in church to be a part of that praying group. I've had people argue with me all through the years, and I don't say this a bunch. I've had people say to me, I can be as good a Christian somewhere else. And I've said to them, no, you cannot. You cannot be as good a Christian as somewhere else. I've had people that love to hike the Smoky Mountains. They talk about up on Mount Pecan. It's a gorgeous place, I'm sure. Or guys that love to bass fish. They get out there on the lake and etc. Those are great things. You can experience God's presence in all of those places. But we need, the Bible says in Hebrews, do not forsake the assembling of yourselves together. Now, he just put that in there for whatever reason. Do not forsake the assembling of yourselves together. So when somebody asks you, why do you go to church? One huge reason is to pray with other Christians. If you're here this morning and God is speaking to you, maybe you've never accepted Christ as your Savior Lord, and He's speaking to you, and you're considering following Christ, repenting, turning from your sins, and following Christ. We would welcome you this morning as we sing our invitation. There may be someone else here this morning who's not an active member of a local church, or they're looking for a church, and would want to link up with this church and the mission and ministry of this church. We welcome you here this morning. Whatever decision God places on your heart, I would ask you to make that public as we stand and sing.